Last month, a grandmother in Pennsylvania was fined $5,000 and threatened with jail time for growing a fruit tree in her backyard. The tree looked harmless, ordinary, even. But what she didn't know, it was on a federal ban list. 15 common fruits can land you in the same trouble. Most gardeners have no idea these restrictions even exist. The wrong plant in your garden could cost you thousands in fines, years of legal headaches, or worse, serious health risks to your family and pets. Agricultural inspectors have the authority to enter your property, destroy your plants, and bill you for the removal. It happens more often than you think. But here's what most people don't understand. The government doesn't just ban plants randomly. There's a system, 3 specific categories of danger that officials use to classify these plants. I almost made the same mistake 5 years ago. Gorgeous Bradford pear tree at my local nursery, only $29. Compact size, beautiful white blooms, the cashier was already ringing it up. Then something made me pause. I pulled out my phone right there in the checkout line and searched Bradford Pear legal. Turns out it's now banned in 3 states for destroying native ecosystems. I put that tree back and walked out. I dodged a legal bullet by researching first. That's what this video is going to do for you. That moment in the checkout line taught me something. The government has reasons for these bans. Not arbitrary rules, but 3 specific danger categories. The government doesn't ban plants because they look dangerous or sound exotic. Authorities classify them into 3 specific categories based on real-world risk. Understanding these categories is how you think like an inspector instead of just memorizing a list. Category 1. Medical threat. These plants contain toxins that cause seizures, organ failure, or death in humans and animals. No amount of preparation makes them safe. Category 2. Economic threat. These plants carry diseases that can wipe out entire agricultural industries. We're talking billions of dollars in crop losses, thousands of jobs destroyed. Category 3. Ecological threat. These plants escape cultivation, spread aggressively, and destroy native ecosystems. Once established, they're nearly impossible to eradicate. Each of the 15 fruits you're about to learn falls into one of these categories. Some fall into all 3. Let's start with the medical threats. The first fruit on this list has fooled people for centuries with its appearance. Fruit number 1. Ackee. It's beautiful. Bright red outer shell that splits open to reveal glossy black seeds surrounded by soft, cream-colored flesh. Looks like something from a tropical resort buffet. That's exactly the problem. This is what I call the visual deception pattern, where beautiful appearance hides deadly danger. Ackee contains a toxin called hypoglycin. When the fruit isn't perfectly ripe, this toxin causes what's known as Jamaican Vomiting Sickness. It starts with vomiting and exhaustion. Within hours, it progresses to seizures, coma, and in severe cases, death. The toxin attacks your blood sugar regulation, and your brain literally runs out of fuel. Here's what makes this particularly dangerous. There's no reliable test for ripeness. Even experienced growers in Jamaica, where this fruit is part of the national dish, occasionally get it wrong. The difference between safe and deadly is a matter of hours in the ripening process, and you cannot tell by looking at it. That's why it's banned in all 50 states. No exceptions, no permits, no "I know what I'm doing" allowances. Agricultural inspectors consider it too dangerous to risk, period. This is why appearance-based safety judgments fail with banned plants. Beautiful doesn't mean safe. In fact, some of the most dangerous plants on this list are also the most attractive. Officials look for the underlying mechanism of harm, not the cosmetic appeal. Visual deception is dangerous enough, but what if the government itself once promoted a plant, handed it out for free, then reversed course and banned it? That contradiction is our next pattern. Fruit number 2. Black currants. In the early 1900s, federal agriculture departments actually promoted these berries, encouraged American farmers to plant them, gave away free seedlings in some states. They were considered a valuable crop for jam and juice production. Here's the government reversal pattern in action, where promoted plants become prohibited when hidden dangers emerge. Black currants are the host plant for white pine blister rust, a devastating fungal disease. The berries themselves are harmless to humans, but the leaves and stems carry spores that jump to white pine trees. Once infected, white pines develop cankers that girdle and kill the tree within a few years. The white pine timber industry collapsed in several states before officials connected the dots back to black currant bushes in nearby gardens. By then, millions of trees were already infected. The economic damage ran into billions when you account for lost timber, lost jobs, and the cost of trying to contain the spread. Now they're banned in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York. The heart of white pine country. Some western states allow them because white pines aren't commercially significant there, but inspectors in pine-dependent regions treat these like biological weapons. This is why officials now scrutinize any plant with a history of agricultural promotion. Just because the government once recommended it doesn't mean it's safe. In fact, that reversal is often a red flag for serious underlying risks that weren't understood at the time. Government reversals teach us to question official recommendations. But our next fruit was never promoted. It was banned because it hijacks something even more fundamental than trees: your sense of taste itself. Fruit number 3. Miracle fruit. This one's fascinating because it's not toxic. You can eat it safely. The berry itself won't hurt you. What it does is far stranger. It contains a protein called miraculin that binds to your taste receptors and makes everything sour taste intensely sweet for up to 2 hours. Bite into a lemon after eating miracle fruit, and it tastes like lemonade. Vinegar tastes like apple juice. Your tongue lies to you completely. This is the sensory manipulation danger pattern, where plants alter human perception systems in ways that compromise safety judgments. The FDA's concern goes deeper than the novelty effect. If you can't taste sour, you can't detect spoiled food, rotting milk, fermented juice, bacterial contamination. All of these trigger sour or off tastes as a warning signal. Miracle fruit disables that warning system for hours. Imagine a child eats miracle fruit, then drinks spoiled milk that tastes fine to them. Or an elderly person can't detect that their leftovers have gone bad. The fruit creates a sensory blind spot that can lead to serious food poisoning. It's banned or heavily restricted in California and Florida. Other states allow it, but with warning labels. Inspectors worry about it being served at restaurants or events where people don't understand what they're consuming afterward. This is why officials treat sensory manipulation as seriously as toxicity. When a plant removes your ability to detect danger through taste, it becomes a danger itself. Your senses are safety tools, and anything that breaks those tools gets scrutinized. Sensory deception is one thing, but what happens when the government itself creates a problem by trying to solve another one? Our next fruit is that exact scenario. Fruit number 4, Callery pear, sold commercially as Bradford Pear. You've probably seen these lining suburban streets. White blossoms in spring, compact growth, attractive shape. The USDA distributed millions of them free of charge as an ornamental street tree program in the 1960s and 70s. Agricultural planners thought they'd found the perfect urban tree. This is the ecological escape pattern, where plants break free from controlled cultivation and weaponize themselves in the wild. What officials didn't predict: Callery pears cross-pollinate with each other and revert to their wild form. The cultivated Bradford is thornless and well-behaved. The wild offspring are covered in 3-inch thorns, sharp enough to puncture tractor tires. These thorns can impale farm equipment, injure livestock, and turn hiking trails into hazard zones. Worse, they spread aggressively. Birds eat the small fruits and deposit seeds everywhere. Within 20 years of that USDA program, wild Callery pear thickets were choking out native forests across the eastern United States. They form dense, impenetrable barriers that nothing else can grow through. Now they're banned in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, with more states adding them every year. The original street trees are being removed at taxpayer expense. Some cities are offering bounties to property owners who cut them down. This is why officials now understand that controlled cultivation is temporary. Plants evolve, escape, and adapt faster than we can manage them. Any assumption that we can keep an aggressive species contained eventually fails, and the cleanup costs dwarf whatever aesthetic or agricultural benefit we thought we'd gain. Before we continue to the next pattern, if you're finding this information valuable, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell icon so you never accidentally plant a $5,000 mistake in your own backyard. We've covered 4 patterns. We have 11 more to go, and they get more dangerous from here. Autumn olive. The name sounds peaceful, even pretty, but this next one breeds like nothing you've seen before. Quick pause here. If you're finding this valuable, make sure you're subscribed so you never accidentally plant a $5,000 mistake. Hit that notification bell. We've covered 4 danger patterns. The next one breeds faster than anything you've seen before. Fruit number 5, autumn olive. One mature tree produces up to 200,000 fruits per year. Let that sink in. 200,000. Birds eat the berries and spread seeds across miles of territory. A single tree planted in your backyard can spawn thousands of offspring within a decade. This is the exponential spread pattern, where reproduction rates overwhelm human control efforts. But the spread itself is only half the problem. Autumn olive doesn't just outcompete native plants through sheer numbers. It cheats. The plant releases chemicals into the soil called allelopathic compounds. These chemicals poison the root systems of surrounding vegetation, essentially clearing space for more autumn olive seedlings. Biologists calculate that in ideal conditions, one tree can establish a 30-acre infestation within 20 years without human intervention. Wildlife management areas in several states have lost entire meadows to these thickets. The biodiversity collapses. Native berries, wildflowers, grasses all disappear because the soil chemistry has been altered. It's banned in Connecticut, Wisconsin, and Virginia, with control programs actively removing existing trees. Property owners are required to destroy any autumn olive found on their land, even if it was planted decades ago before anyone understood the risk. This is why inspectors know that reproduction rate matters as much as toxicity. A plant that spreads faster than you can remove it becomes effectively impossible to control. By the time you realize you have a problem, you have 10,000 problems scattered across your property and beyond. Exponential spread relies on small fruits and birds. But what happens when the plant itself becomes a weapon? Our next fruit doesn't need animals to spread. It spreads through sheer physical force. Fruit number 6, Himalayan Blackberry. The berries themselves are impressive. 3 times the size of regular blackberries, deep purple, and actually quite delicious. That's not the problem. The problem is what the plant does to defend those berries. This is the physical aggression pattern, where plants develop weaponized structures that cause direct physical harm. Himalayan blackberry canes are covered in thorns strong enough to puncture tractor tires, not garden glove thorns, industrial equipment thorns. Agricultural engineers have documented these thorns penetrating heavy canvas, leather work boots, even thin metal siding. Farm workers have required stitches from deep lacerations. The canes grow 20 feet in a single season. They don't climb gently like regular blackberries. They sprawl, arch and root wherever they touch ground. A single plant can cover a quarter acre in 5 years, creating an impenetrable thorny fortress. County officials in Oregon and Washington report structures being swallowed by these blackberries. Abandoned cars, storage sheds, sections of fence. The canes grow over, around, and through them. Removal requires heavy equipment, thick protective gear, and often professional services costing thousands of dollars. Wildlife gets trapped in these thickets. Deer with canes wrapped around their legs. Dogs that ventured in and couldn't find their way out. The thorns don't break off cleanly. They embed and tear. Now they're banned in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, the Pacific Northwest, where they've caused the most damage. Even cutting them down is dangerous. The thorns remain sharp for years after the plant dies. This is why officials treat physical aggression as a safety category, distinct from toxicity. You don't have to eat it to get hurt. You just have to get close to it. Physical aggression is obvious once you encounter it. But for Western states, there's a fruit that kills silently, not through thorns or toxins, but by stealing the one resource those states can't spare. Fruit number 7, Russian olive. In the arid West, this tree was promoted as drought-tolerant landscaping. Silver green leaves, yellow fragrant flowers, small olive-like fruits. Cities planted them along streets. Farmers used them as windbreaks. Everyone thought they'd found a plant perfectly adapted to dry climates. They were half right. Russian olive is adapted to dry climates. It survives by stealing water from everything else around it. This is the resource theft pattern. The root system of Russian olive consumes 3 times more groundwater than native plants. In regions where water is already scarce, this creates a crisis. Water resource managers in Colorado track these trees because A single mature Russian olive can draw down the water table enough to kill native cottonwoods, willows, and riparian shrubs within a 50-foot radius. But it doesn't stop at water theft. Just like autumn olive, Russian olive releases allelopathic chemicals into the soil. It poisons competitors while simultaneously draining their water supply. It's a 1-2 punch that clears entire streambeds and irrigation ditches. Agricultural extension offices in the West now warn that Russian olive is one of the primary threats to already stressed water systems. In drought years, these trees keep drinking at full capacity, while everything else withers. They don't adapt their consumption, they just take. The fruits spread through birds and livestock, establishing new trees along every waterway. In some counties, up to 70% of streamside vegetation has been replaced by Russian olive monocultures. It's banned in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. Removal programs are funded at the state level because the water impact is considered an infrastructure threat, not just an environmental one. This is why officials in dry regions treat water-thieving plants as aggressively as toxic ones. In the West, stealing water is stealing survival. Russian olive's water theft makes it especially dangerous in the West. I learned just how serious this is through someone very close to me. This happened to my neighbor in Colorado 3 years ago. He planted Russian olive because it's drought-tolerant, seemed perfect for our climate. Free cuttings from a friend. 2 summers later, the county agricultural extension showed up with a removal order. The free cuttings he got cost him $800 in professional removal, plus a $500 fine. $1,300 total. That's when he called me. How was I supposed to know? Most people don't know. That's the problem. That conversation changed how I approach every plant purchase. And there are 8 more patterns you need to know before you buy anything else. We're halfway through. 7 danger patterns down, 8 more to go. If this is saving you from an expensive mistake, make sure you're subscribed. That notification bell means you'll never accidentally plant something that could cost you thousands in fines or removal fees. The next patterns get even more serious. Let's continue. Buckthorn. It looks like a harmless hedge plant, but this one uses biological warfare that spreads faster than any physical weapon. Fruit number 8, buckthorn. From a distance, it looks like an ideal hedge plant. Dense foliage, grows quickly, stays green late into fall. Property owners planted it for privacy screens throughout the Midwest. Then ecologists discovered what it was doing to the soil. This is the chemical warfare pattern. Remember autumn olive's allelopathy? Buckthorn takes that strategy even further. The berries contain a powerful laxative compound. When birds eat these berries, they spread the seeds rapidly. And I mean rapidly. The laxative effect means seeds get deposited miles from the parent plant before the bird's digestive system would normally process them. But the chemical warfare doesn't stop there. Buckthorn leaves decompose into the soil and release compounds that suppress the germination of native seeds. It clears the competition, then fills that space with its own seedlings. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. Buckthorn leaves out earlier than native plants in spring and holds its leaves later into fall. That extended growing season means it's photosynthesizing and building resources while everything else is dormant. It gets a 2-month head start on growth every single year. Forest managers recognize buckthorn as one of the top 3 threats to woodland biodiversity in the upper Midwest. Once established, it forms such dense thickets that native wildflowers, tree seedlings, and ground cover simply disappear. It's banned in Minnesota, Illinois, and Massachusetts, with active removal programs consuming millions in state funding. Property owners are required to remove it, even if it's been there for decades. Chemical warfare works in secret through the soil, but our next fruit's weapon is impossible to miss. In fact, it's evacuated entire buildings. Fruit number 9, durian. If you've never encountered durian, it's difficult to describe. Imagine rotting onions mixed with raw sewage, diesel fuel, and gym socks fermenting in summer heat. That smell comes from a spiky, football-sized fruit that people in Southeast Asia consider a delicacy. Love it or hate it, you cannot ignore it. This is the sensory assault pattern. The odor is so overwhelming that hotels, airports, public transit systems, and apartment buildings across Asia explicitly ban it. Signs with durian crossed out appear next to no smoking signs. This isn't preference, it's public safety. In the United States, durian has triggered multiple building evacuations. People smell it and assume there's a gas leak. They call emergency services. Fire departments respond with hazmat protocols. I'm not exaggerating. This has made regional news multiple times. One incident in Canberra, Australia, required evacuation of an entire university library because someone left durian in a vent system. But the smell isn't even the main reason it's banned in Florida and restricted in other Gulf states. Durian trees can harbor citrus greening disease, the same bacteria that's currently devastating Florida's orange industry. The trees serve as reservoir hosts, keeping the disease alive even when citrus trees are treated. Florida's citrus industry produces 70% of America's orange juice. Protecting that from any potential disease vector is non-negotiable. The smell makes durian socially unacceptable. The disease risk makes it legally unacceptable. Sensory assault is one threat. But when a plant threatens the entire food supply of a nation, that's when federal eradication campaigns begin. Fruit number 10, common barberry. Small red berries, thorny branches, yellow flowers in spring. Looks completely harmless. In the early 1900s, the federal government launched one of the largest plant eradication campaigns in American history to destroy every common barberry bush in wheat-growing states. This is the national security pattern, where plants threaten food supply stability at a level that triggers federal intervention. Common barberry is the alternate host for wheat stem rust, a fungal disease that can destroy up to 70% of a wheat crop in a single season. 70%. That's not agricultural inconvenience. That's famine-level crop failure. The disease has a complex life cycle. It needs both wheat and barberry to complete its reproductive cycle. Without barberry, wheat stem rust struggles to spread. With barberry present, the disease jumps from plant to plant, mutates rapidly, and overwhelms the wheat's natural defenses. During World War I, wheat was critical for feeding troops and allies. The government didn't ask property owners to remove common barberry. They sent crews door to door with federal authority to enter private property and destroy every bush they found. Millions of plants were removed. That campaign never ended. The USDA still maintains active surveillance in wheat-growing regions. If common barberry is found, it's destroyed immediately. No permits, no grandfather clauses, No, it was here first. Arguments. It's banned in Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, and the Dakotas. All wheat-dependent states. But here's the confusion. Japanese barberry looks nearly identical and is legal in most places. You need to know the difference, because planting the wrong one brings federal attention. National food security threats get federal resources. But for Florida specifically, there's one plant that threatens billions in a different crop, and this one has 13-inch thorns as backup. Fruit number 11, Trifoliate orange. It looks like a miniature orange, small, extremely sour, covered in fuzz. Not commercially valuable, but people plant it as an ornamental citrus or use it as rootstock for grafting. Hardy, cold-tolerant, seems useful. This is the silent carrier pattern, where plants spread disease without showing symptoms themselves. Trifoliate orange is a carrier for citrus canker, a bacterial disease that destroys commercial citrus crops. The plant itself rarely shows symptoms. It looks healthy while harboring bacteria that can jump to sweet oranges, grapefruits, and lemons. Florida produces 70% of America's orange juice. The citrus industry there is worth billions of dollars and employs tens of thousands of people. Citrus canker can wipe out entire orchards within a few years once it establishes. Infected trees produce misshapen, dropping fruit that's unmarketable. Eventually, the trees die. Agricultural inspectors treat trifoliate orange like a biological time bomb. You can't see the disease. You can't test for it reliably without laboratory analysis. By the time symptoms appear on nearby commercial citrus, the bacteria has already spread to neighboring properties. And just like Callery pear, trifoliate orange grows 3-inch thorns in the wild. Those thorns puncture tires, injure workers, and make removal dangerous even when you know it needs to go. It's banned in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Texas. Basically every state with significant citrus production. Property owners in these states have been fined thousands of dollars for having a single trifoliate orange tree. The risk to the regional economy is simply too high. This is why officials use the term silent carrier with such seriousness. The deadliest threats are the ones you can't see coming. Silent carriers hide in plain sight, but our next fruit doesn't hide anything. It's called the little apple of death, and that name is completely accurate. Fruit number 12, Manchineel. In Spanish, it's called Manzanilla de la Muerte, the little apple of death. This name is not metaphorical. This is the total toxicity pattern, where every single part of the plant is a deadly weapon. Bite into the fruit and your throat closes within minutes. The toxins cause immediate swelling, blistering in your mouth and esophagus, severe abdominal pain, and internal bleeding. People who've survived describe it as the most intense pain they've ever experienced. Death can occur within hours if you swallow enough, but the fruit is just the beginning. Stand under a Manchineel tree during rain, and the water dripping from the leaves will burn your skin. The sap causes chemical burns on contact. If it gets in your eyes, it can cause permanent blindness. Burn the wood, and the smoke carries the toxins. Inhaling it causes respiratory damage and temporary blindness. There are documented cases of people using Manchineel branches for campfire wood who ended up hospitalized. Forest services in tropical regions mark these trees with red paint, a bright warning band around the trunk. That's how dangerous they are. Authorities physically paint them like hazmat markers, so tourists and residents know to stay away. They grow in Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, while technically not banned, since they're native and protected in some areas. It's illegal to plant new ones, transport them, or remove the warning markers. Federal Park Services monitor every known tree. This is why officials categorize some plants as inherently incompatible with human habitation. There's no safe distance, no safe handling method, no way to make them acceptable. Total toxicity means total exclusion. Total toxicity is obvious once you know about it, but the most insidious pattern might be the one that looks beautiful while silently destroying entire ecosystems. Fruit number 13. Privet. This beautiful hedge is an ecosystem assassin. For decades, it was the luxury hedge plant. Glossy green leaves, white flowers, fast growth, easy maintenance. Wealthy estates line their properties with it. The berries are small, dark purple, and completely ignored by most gardeners. This is the ecosystem collapse pattern, where invasive plants trigger cascading system failures across entire food webs. Privet has invaded over 1 million acres of southern forests. That's not an estimate, that's measured. When it establishes, native plant diversity drops by 90%. Wildflowers, shrubs, tree seedlings, they disappear because privet creates such dense shade that nothing else can photosynthesize underneath. But here's where it gets worse. Ecologists measured insect populations in privet-invaded forests versus native forests. Insect biomass drops by 80%. Caterpillars, beetles, native pollinators, they need native plants to survive. Privet doesn't support them. No insects means no food for birds. Wildlife biologists documented that bird species diversity drops by 80% in areas where privet dominates. Not because the birds are eating toxic berries, because their food supply, the insects, has collapsed. It's a cascading ecological failure. One invasive plant removes native vegetation, which removes insects, which removes birds. The entire forest goes silent. It's banned in Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, with millions spent on removal efforts. But 1 million acres is already invaded. By the time officials recognized the pattern, it was everywhere. This is why ecosystem-level thinking matters to agricultural authorities. Individual plant toxicity affects individuals. Ecosystem collapse affects entire regions for generations. We've covered 13 patterns: toxins, diseases, invasives, economic threats. But there's one more fruit that combines danger in a way that's particularly cruel. It's only toxic to some people, and they have no way to know until it's too late. Fruit number 14. Carambola, commonly called starfruit. Slice it crosswise and you get a perfect 5-pointed star. It's beautiful, mildly sweet tart, and sold in grocery stores across America. For most people, it's perfectly safe. This is the selective toxicity pattern, where plants are deadly only to specific populations who have no way to detect the danger before consuming. Starfruit contains a neurotoxin called caramboxin. If you have healthy kidneys, your body filters it out harmlessly. But if you have any degree of kidney disease, even mild impairment you might not know about, the toxin accumulates in your nervous system. Symptoms start with hiccups that won't stop, then confusion, seizures, and in severe cases, death. Nephrologists have documented dozens of fatalities from people with undiagnosed kidney problems eating starfruit. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. Kidney disease often has no symptoms in early stages. Someone can have reduced kidney function and feel completely normal. They eat starfruit at a restaurant, thinking it's just an exotic garnish, and end up in the emergency room. Medical authorities track starfruit toxicity cases, and while it's not federally banned, it's restricted in cultivation in several states. Florida and Hawaii allow commercial growing, but California restricts it. The concern isn't the fruit itself, it's the complete lack of warning for vulnerable populations. And that brings us to our 15th and final pattern: regulatory confusion. Some fruits like jujube fall into legal grey areas where state and federal regulations contradict each other, leaving gardeners uncertain about what's actually legal. But rather than dive into that complexity, what you need to understand is this: 15 distinct danger patterns exist. You now know what officials look for when they classify risk. 15 fruits, 15 danger patterns. That's a lot of information. Let me bring this all together and tell you what happened to that Pennsylvania grandmother and what you should do next. 15 fruits, 15 danger patterns, visual deception, government reversals, sensory manipulation, ecological escape, exponential spread, physical aggression, resource theft, chemical warfare, sensory assault, national security threats, silent carriers, total toxicity, ecosystem collapse, selective toxicity, and regulatory confusion. That's how officials think about risk, not randomly, systematically. That Pennsylvania grandmother, she planted Trifoliate orange thinking it was a decorative hedge, silent carrier for citrus canker. Her $5,000 fine was cheaper than the county-wide citrus quarantine her harmless tree could have triggered. She learned the expensive way. 3 years ago, I would have made the same mistakes. Now I check 3 things before buying any plant: state ban lists, disease vectors, and invasion potential. That research takes 10 minutes. It saved me thousands. So what should you grow instead? 3 safe options: native berry bushes for your specific USDA zone, disease-resistant heirloom apple varieties, and container citrus if you're in borderline zones. Abundant harvests without legal risk. The USDA native plant database is free and searchable by zip code. You now know what most home gardeners don't: the legal landmines hiding in nursery aisles, the patterns officials use to classify danger, the difference between a beautiful garden and a $5,000 mistake. This knowledge is worth thousands, potentially tens of thousands, if it saves you from a single removal order or fine. Share this video with your gardening friends, your neighbors, anyone planning spring planting. They need to know this before they buy, not after the county agricultural extension shows up with destruction orders. If you found this valuable, I've linked the USDA plant database and state-by-state ban lists in the description below. Check your property against those lists. You might already have banned plants and not know it yet. And subscribe so you never miss critical information like this. I make these videos because after my neighbor's $1,300 lesson and my own close calls, I realized most gardeners are operating blind. We trust nurseries, we trust garden centers, we assume if it's for sale, it must be legal. That assumption can cost you everything. Now you know better.